family around there in Massachusetts.
Talk about your career in coaching and playing and kind of. I mean, obviously you've been around a long time and really have coached successfully for such a long stint of time with such great success. But talk about like kind of the genesis of your career and kind of how you went through kind of most of those steps.
Well, here's what I think it was. I just touched on it a little bit. When I was a young guy, my dad died, 8 years old. My dad died. So that was the genesis that we moved back to Massachusetts to be with my family. My mother is amazing. She's an amazing woman. She's 79 years old. She's tougher than crusty boogers. But I always sought that male influence. And that was what gave me structure. And that's what got me going. So, and fortunately you get to high school age. And let me just tell you something, okay? Okay. Certainly in this room, in many other rooms, I'm the worst athlete in that room right there. But I love team and I love ball. So I got to high school and I was around a program. And actually, my brother was the coach of that program up until the last year. It was impactful to our family. And we won championships and we had success and we had watched a lot, like in a small town environment, like you wouldn't see anymore. A lot of kids that went on to play at a high level. We had a kid who went on to play baseball at LSU. We had a kid who played in Major League Baseball for 20 years. We had a kid who went to, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. And it kind of doesn't happen that way in a small town in Holliston, Massachusetts anymore. They're going to get farmed out to a place that would end up being, maybe giving better prospects. But that was my environment. And if I was the bottom guy on that list, it was still great for me to have team and structure. So that was my first idea that I would want to go to coaching. Okay. So as you can imagine, nobody recruited me out of high school. I was at the bottom of that list. I didn't think I was worthy of all that. So I decided to go to Syracuse University in the late 80s. And I bumped around college for a couple of years and I got mediocre grades and I had good times. But then somehow I got on to being a manager at Syracuse. And, Paul Pasqualoni was an assistant coach at the time, and he allowed me to be a manager. And that structure, and anybody who knows Coach P knows that he don't play. And the same thing was the case of the offensive coordinator, George DeLeon. God rest his soul. And, these guys were on the cutting edge of building something from nothing. So those type of things and those role models and even those players, like as I realized right there, they'll treat you as you treat them. If you put them on a pedestal, they'll accept it. If you treat them as a peer, they'll be that. And those are some of my longest friends in my life. And had a really cool time in Syracuse football where they were, Dick McPherson, it was the springboard for him to go to the NFL. So that was it, that I said, okay, this is the only thing in my life that I enjoy. This is the only thing that gives me structure. This is the only thing that gets me motivated. And I found that as a manager, and I said, I bet I could do this as a coach because I didn't know anything. And so from there, I figured out, I say, okay, I don't know how I figured it out, but if I would do the video that let me hang around long enough to learn some football. And when they were breaking the VCRs, the Panasonic VCRs, and if I knew how to fix them, okay, I had value and they'd keep me around. And early coaches like Bob Shoup, who's been coaching a long time, and Barry Gallup at Northeastern, and a lot of really good coaches that Joe Gilbert, who's still coaching in the NFL. These young coaches just kind of took me and we were all young. We were young, dumb, and broke, and it was a blast. And we had structure. I learned. And then somehow or other, I was able to get to Pittsburgh. And again, Johnny Majors was the head football coach. And Kurt Signetti was the recruiting coordinator at the time of Indiana fame. And guys like Bob Babich and Tim Lewis, who's the defensive coordinator at Boston College now. All these guys would deal with the knucklehead that I was because maybe I could help in a different way, and they took me under their wing. And it was kind of early. There really wasn't a model for a guy who wasn't an ex-player to be a football coach. There really wasn't many of those. Or if they were, there wasn't the internet to know about them. So it
Right.
was kind of an oddity. And so that was pretty formative. And then I kind of got this opportunity of a lifetime. All of those were, and really you look at those and say, why is a manager going to get to coach at Northeastern? Or why is this guy from Northeastern going to get to be a GA for Johnny Majors? Well, then I got the next one where I get my first full-time job at North Dakota State. And that's a household name now, but at that point in time, it wasn't. It was a regional program, and I didn't know anything about it. And I had taken this approach, and I said, well, I'm going to go here for 1 year, and I'm going to get a better job. Well, I stayed a lot longer than that. I met my wife there. I bought my first house there, and I'm still waiting to find a better job than that one right now. So, and then those guys that I got to work with, and there's a guy named Bob Babich who coached in the NFL after that for a long time. Gus Bradley was the D coordinator, and he's been a D coordinator and a head football coach in the NFL. Todd Wash is a defensive line coach in the NFL. Scotty Hazelton was my roommate, and he's the defensive coordinator at Wake Forest now. Really, really, really good. So I got all of these guys that were really good to me and could see through my knucklehead that there was something there that I would work and they just gave me a chance to grow. So, I mean, look at that took about 12 years to end up having schooling and end up growing and kind of polishing as a coach. And that's kind of how it started. And then from there, it ended up being that, my opportunities would come if I would go to a place that didn't have anything and it would provide me opportunity. So if I went from North Dakota State to Tennessee Martin because they hadn't won a conference game in 7 years, but they needed a defensive coordinator. So I could go and learn there and screw up full speed, and it was going to be okay as I developed. Or you go to the University at Buffalo, who's transitioning from 1AA or FCS football into Division I, and you get that opportunity. Or you go to the University of Maine as the special teams coordinator and I'd never done that before. I'd never coordinated all the special teams before, but maybe based on track record and energy that I have, I could go and do that. And being able to take a salary like that, or go to Old Dominion where they didn't have football and start a program from scratch. So I've had all these cool opportunities to grow when I got no business for most of them. I got no business, So, and somebody said, okay, well, here's a place that needs to get better. There's a guy that wants to do it. And if I bust my tail, then, and screw up full speed and learn as I go. I don't know. Too long right there, fellas?
No, it's great. It was great. You brought up a really great point too about which is now, as you know, there's a path for guys who do not play in college or are not really going to have an opportunity and decide to become like a student coach. Maybe they're in like a year as a walk-on, and they realize that their career as an athlete is not going to go much further. You see a lot more of when you did it. It wasn't a thing. It was really guy played in college, goes in GAs, and then follows the kind of the path. But now you see a large presence of guys that either come into college right away, like as like a student assistant or a manager, some different role to be able to learn the game while they're in college, and then come out literally out of college with jobs, right? Or guys who came in, maybe played a year, and then at the end of their college, as they're getting towards the end of their education, help out as a student assistant, get a job. That has become and you see head coaches all over. I think it's Arizona's head coach. Didn't play in college, and there's a lot of guys now. I guess you started. You're one, and Mike, but you and then obviously Mike Leach was a famous name with respect to that, like was put out there that he didn't, play in college any football. What is it about that you've seen, like with the opportunities that happen now for younger coaches, that they don't have to? They could actually choose coaching as an actual career, because back when you started, that wasn't really like kind of a thought process as a career.
No, you're right. There were some things that were clearer back then, right? you could know what the path was to get to be a coach. Okay. If you could get yourself a part-time job as a coach right there, and then you get a graduate assistant, well, you had a pretty good chance of getting a full-time job. And that was a pretty clear path. And now I'm not quite so sure what the path is. Well, the path is open to a lot of different people. And there's so many different roles now. Okay, you got a GM and you got somebody, you've got the recruiting facet of it, and you've got the coaching facet of it. And anymore, it seems like if there is maybe a DB coach, well, he's the assistant DB coach. So they're backed up. They got a depth chart that he could step into that role. And, there's so much more of it. Like, I think it's like getting in the front end of Silicon Valley. It has blossomed in 30 years. It's huge money now. And there's large investments, and there's a million different paths. And, it doesn't really matter so long as, what's the million stories of the guys who just decided they were going to bust their ass and create value and end up being smart, and they make value and they grow. It doesn't really matter anymore.
No, you're right. And the amount of money that's in football in general is so enormous.
Yeah.
That it's funny because when the players started to get paid in college, the thought process initially was, well, would there be enough funds to continue to spin around? But what's actually happened is there's just been more and more of an influx of funds. So it's like an afterthought of that part, especially for the biggest schools, obviously, where there's just so much money flowing into those programs that the player fund does not take away from anything else that's going on. It just actually increasing, I think, the interest of getting more fundraising going, and they end up fundraising for more different things than they would before because they're fundraising partially for the players, which is wild. I mean, it's not something that I would have ever thought would go in that direction.
Yeah, like it's an arms race. Okay, if you are going to be a Big Ten football team, okay, then there is a price to pay for facilities. There is a price to pay for what you're going to invest in your players. There is a general staff layout that's reasonably consistent, that when you pull up those teams on the webpage right there, it looks like a corporate America setting. There's 40, 50 people in that environment. And it seems like those people are okay with that being the cost of doing business, or figuring out how to do business at that cost. Hey, this is what we've identified as whatever team it is in the Big Ten or the SEC or the ACC. It seems like there's a mark for all of that. And, early on, there was talk about that, like you talked about, Dave. Okay, with the NIL investments, maybe we need to cut back off these people that are supplemental staff. That doesn't seem to have happened. Maybe, but it seems like there's more of those guys than ever before.
More.
I mean, look, you can look at college rosters now, and we talk about it all the time. I mean, if you see one now that doesn't have a GM as a title, and he getting paid the most money, we talk about it all the time, how things trickle down, right? And it starts with, your blue bloods, your big wigs at the top. And then before you know it, like that's that's how everybody wants to go about it, because if they're doing it at the highest level and winning, that's what I'm going to do, right? Yep. It's a copycat world, especially football. Everybody's, I've never had original idea in my life. I just steal from everybody else. And the first thing I do is I look at the guys that are winning. And that's like, okay, if they do it, and then you take it and you tweak it. But you see now, you used to go through those college rosters, click on coaches, and, there was every position had a coach. Now, all of a sudden, you get below when those coaches end, there's another 40 names. And those guys are really more important doing, a lot of the work and what comes to it. But it comes down to, the money aspect of things, too. Like Dave said, like college football has grown, and the money that comes from it. And I believe players should get paid, but there needs to be some type of, we need parameters when it comes to kind of this stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I get it, because this is what it is, right? And it really comes down to this, though. this stuff's been going on for years, but now that it's out in the open and with social media and all those other kind of things, that's what everybody sees. And that's what they think everything is like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
D, I could tell you that it's not that at Pace University. And,
Yeah, well,
it's rare air that you get to that. And to double back on some of your thoughts right there, okay? If you take the drama out of it and the fit and all that, you know, I'm dying to see what happens at North Carolina, because it would seem like there's a group that said, hey, let's take our model that we kind of revolutionized the NFL with, and let's take it to another market and see how it works. I watched this documentary last night. It's one of those football documentaries. It's about the 95 Browns and Bill Belichick and all of those guys and names that you know that were babies at that point in time.
Yeah.
You know, Scott Pioli, Michael Lombardi, Phil Savage, and it's a murderer's row of what football was for the next 20 to 30 years. So now what? They're going to take that and then they're going to try it in college. And so what's everybody else doing with their GM position? Well, there's an organization that said, hey, we're hiring a GM, a real GM. And there's other people who are doing it other way. It's a great, I mean, it's like watching a riveting game or a show that you really like. I can't wait to see what comes next. Can't wait, you know.
It's wild. You're right, and how each group is using their different people and their different roles. Like if you go on to a coaching staff list on, you know, where they list the coaches and what they do and their, you know, their contact information. And if you go from one school to the next, which I do often because I work with like kids that are trying to help them get recruited, and from one school to the next, it's so vastly different, right? And then when I talk to I'll talk to a coach and I'll say, hey, so this, you know, one group over here still has some level of the old model where the position coach will still look at it. And then some other guys are like, no, like I'm just going to pass it right over to the recruiting guy and he's going to filter this. Like no matter who you send me, you know, I'm not looking, I'm passing it right over to the recruiting guy. Right. And it's so interesting how all the different models are. The funny part is explaining it to parents because parents, like they think it's like when I played, you know, in the 90s, you know, like this guy does this and this guy does this. And, you know, there's only 9 guys on, you know, 10 guys on the staff. And that's how their mind works. They can't. And what you said is really poignant, especially at the highest level. But even at lower levels, there's some version of it. It's like corporate America, okay? Like try and sell your widget to the Walmart executives and figure out who to navigate Walmart, right? To try to find who the person is that's responsible for handling your widget. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what you're doing. And part of it's intentional, right? Because they have the groups that they want to work with and they have groups. And part of it is let's see how much this person really wants to play here. Yeah. You know, if this person really thinks they're good enough, they're going to jump through the hoops necessary. But when you explain that the parents will be like, you know, I'm like, you don't know how many like huddle links, like you said, the huddle link.
Yeah. Good luck.
That's so 2010. Like, I don't know how to say it any other way. It's like you said the huddle link. I mean, people said mass huddle links in 2010. You know, like that's you're gonna have to do a little more than that, unless it says within your huddle link 6'5". You know, alongside of that, then that'll go right to the proper channels. But if it says any, you know, oh, my kid is 6'1", okay, well that's big enough to play depending on the position at the highest level. But there's a lot of 6'1" people in the world, right? So that there's going to have to be a lot more than that, right? So and it's very very interesting how college football is. But you nailed it when you said it's kind of like corporate America, because there's a navigation process when you're an employee within corporate America that is required as well, right? There's a way to navigate. Me and Derek were just talking about that. There are some guys that we say like that are in college football that I don't know if they know anything, but they know how to navigate the system. They really are good at navigating the system. Make sure the coaches that they work for, they do the job that's necessary, but they may not be really, quote unquote, an exceptional coach, but they know how to do what's necessary within the system. We were just discussing that earlier.
Yeah. In all those things that you said, hey, are they on the super old model where a coach recruits an area? Nope, they've evolved to where the coach goes and recruits his position coach. Nope, the coaches just sign off on what the recruiting department said right there, and they're in the most evolved model and the most NFL-like model where there is a personnel department and a coach department. It's wild. And then, like you said, it's not all about coaching anymore. There's different things that you could be a recruiting expert. You could be really connected with the players. You could be really dialed in with a community or in a recruiting, and you have value to these organizations, and there's a role for you. Because like you said, it's not what it used to be. Well, there's 9 full-time coaches and the head coach, and there's a couple of slappy GAs in there and the video guy. And, it's not that anymore.
No.
So there's all kinds of ways to rise. And, you're right. If you hold it to that old standard and say, okay, this is what I think a football coach is. There's all kinds of different models right now,
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I mean, look, there's guys that just are really good at social media. And it's like, hey, you're going to handle our X page and Instagram and all this other stuff. And, it's all like everything adds a bit of a benefit, right? It all, because you got to look at kind of like what the kids and what our guys that we're recruiting, what do they see? What are they into? What's the new niche type of thing? It's how do I find that? How do I get to that cutting edge? How do I do it before someone else does it? You know what I mean? But what's great about this game, though, is at some point you got to play football. Right. And gotta come back, and you have to. Football is a game that will expose you really quickly if you don't, so you can fake it until you can't fake it anymore. And I think that's what's great is it's always going to come back to that. But getting there, totally different process.
That's a cool point right there. Like even in the little world of being a Division II head football coach, there ends up being a lot of things, a lot of different things than a Power 4 coach would have to deal with, but a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, football practice is like recess. Football practice is the reason we do it. And the football games, man, those 10, 12 days a year, that's what we're jumping through all these hoops for. And at the end of the day, it bears out whether all of those different directions. Hey, okay, you got a great social media profile. Does that translate to the field? Can we project it to translating to the field? It's so cool. I don't know, like you look at it right now and you speak to those guys. I spoke to a guy on Friday. He said, we've got 50 new players at the mid-year through the transfer portal. He's got 50 new players. So, okay. And he said it matter-of-factly. It reminded me of back like in 2014 where tackling was changing in college. And a lot of people were in an uproar about it. And a guy like Pete Carroll said, it ain't going back. Let's embrace it. Let's go. Right. And he ended up making that the new normal, or at least being the mouthpiece for that be the new normal. And the same thing for this guy that I was speaking to who is at a group of 4 school. He's just like, yeah, this is the new normal. Let's go. And he didn't flinch. And I think that's got to be it. If you think that you have to know, oh, no, we got all these transfers. How are we going to keep our culture? Figure it out. Let's go.
Yeah.
Isn't that your job? Isn't that your job? Right. Like, or if you want to keep that job, you better figure it out. And the only thing I think now is the windows are close, like tighter. You don't have as much time anymore. Right. Like, because guys want to win now, but we also live in a society of instant gratification.
100.
And that's hard with football because there is a level of you got to develop and you have to trust what we're doing to see down the road. You mentioned it, coach, like football's the ultimate team sport where you need 11 individuals to get it all together and work for 12 games a year. This ain't basketball where we're playing 3 times a week. This ain't soccer where it's games. You're doing the hard work majority of the time in practice. That's tough for a lot of these guys to grind it out like that.
Right. And then if they do have success immediately, they want to be on to the next.
I see you.
Well, that's a great point.
It happened at the place I was. Guy has a good year. You see him come into your office. You go, okay, I know where this is going right here. Even at little old places like that.
And they're going to have to be willing to figure out. And you have experience, like they have to be willing to figure out what are administrations willing to handle, because you may nail it as a coach and win a championship, literally win a championship. Look at Florida State, right? And then the next year you are poached, graduation, all that stuff. And in one season, you're not a good team. But it hasn't changed you as a coach. It means that you might need another year to retool that whole roster again. So nobody knows exactly the time frame turnarounds that are necessary to like build a program. Is it 1 year? Is it now 2 years? Right? It's not 4 years anymore, right? Is it? Can you do it in one? Look, even Dion, who was like turned over the roster really quick. It didn't take the second year he had success. He really, even though he turned it over the way he turned it over, thought it would be an immediate thing. It was really the second year that he was starting to have more success. And then after the second year, now he's got to retool it again because he's got to turn the whole entire roster over again. And he may go back to being really not good next year. And then maybe the next year he's good. What are administrations willing to handle, right? Like obviously at Ohio State and Michigan, they're not really willing to handle too much of it. I think the Michigan coach caught a break in that he beat Ohio State because it's hard, in my opinion, to expect every single year to nail recruiting when you're turning it over in a 1 year process like you are half the time now, right? There are years you're going to completely nail it. You brought in all the right guys. They fit really well. You made the right, chess moves on during the season. You play like UConn, for example, where I played at, like we do a show on them. Mora, dude, he made all the right chess moves for the most part this year. But the question is, will you make the right chess moves next year, right? So right. It's part of it is the players you bring in, right? So it's really, really interesting. And my big question is like, how do you what is the philosophy? And every place might be different, but what is the philosophy when you come in? Because the word development is kind of at the highest level. Now, Division II and Division III, I think you're right. Like, guy goes and catches 60 balls, he's out of there. He can love your school all he wants. He catches 60 balls, unless he really, really loves that place, he's probably out of there, moving up to the next level. But the whole thing is this to me. Basketball became, in America, very big push to the next place you can go. And Europe was very big on, even though they have pros earlier in Europe, that soccer culture where we're developing you within the organization for a very, very long period of time. We kind of own your rights. We saw you were good at 11. We own your rights. You're all the way through to you're like 17, 18. Then we start selling your rights to this club or that club. But you're coming over. You see like the Doncics and the Jokic's of the world having a lot of success, which most people argue not quite as much ability, maybe athletically. They're as big, obviously. You have to have a certain level of height and all that kind of stuff in basketball. But athletically as some of the American players, and they're able to compete, be just as good, in some cases better, because the model of development starts as a whole thing. Well, football, we're moving a lot more towards this American basketball culture which is get them as good as they can right now, get to the next organization, get to the next organization, get to the next organization, and how much do they get developed, and how much of it is really their ability, right? Their ability to and in the long run, does that end up hurting certain aspects of the game as far as and the problem is we may not know the difference, you know what I mean, until because the rest of the world doesn't really play football. But I think Europe showed it in basketball that like American basketball, as far as their development of basketball players, has taken a step back. Not athletically and not what they could do from an athletic standpoint, but as far as from a game standpoint, moving without the ball, setting things up. And I think about football in that aspect of like, what's the incentive for a coach to develop them? Even in high school, right? You could jump to the next high school. You know,
I think.
How do we manage that?
You know, your point is big. It's a big, audacious point right there, right? So I'm trying to think of the things. Look at Ryan Day right now from a staff standpoint right now, and he just won a national championship, and it doesn't look like wind it back was a conversation in the staff room. You know what I mean?
Right.
And okay, that's what it is. There's a guy who has worked with me at Old Dominion, and he was my coordinator here at the last stop at Pace for 1 year, and he is a Power 4 defensive coordinator, and he looks at the moves he makes almost like, okay, I got to figure out, are we going to be good next year, or do I have to move?
Yeah.
You know, he has to look at it and say, okay, are we going to be good this year, or do I have to move? Or we were good this year, I got to make hay while the sun is shining and make that move. And in it, that concept of developing or hanging on, there's development that's going on. There's another kid that I coached at North Dakota State who's the defensive coordinator at Buffalo Bills, and he'll talk about it all the time. He said there's a ton of guys that develop in the NFL. It just isn't sexy to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
And that kid may not hang on long enough to develop fast enough for the pace required at that place.
Yeah.
And that's where you probably look at it at the highest levels. Well, there's probably development that goes on, and we see the product of their development, whether it's because they had a good season and they hit the transfer portal and they came in more developed into their next environment, you know, but it's totally the unsexy thing. Who wants to hear that? Hey, you got to develop. Who wants to hear that in this day and age?
Hey, you got to work, you know,
Yeah, buddy.
Hey, you got to handle this stuff. Right. Like that just, that's not what it's, that's not it. Cause I can't post that. I can't show that on Instagram and get those likes and get those clicks. I can't get that, you know, it's rare to find a guy that's willing to just, you know, almost go silent and, you know, kind of tell the guys now, like the, you know, some of the high school guys sometimes like it's cool to be uncool, you know, like, if you just want to go and do your thing because you have these dreams and these aspirations, like you don't have to be the guy with all the likes on and all the posts and all that other kind of stuff. Like you just buckle down and do what you're supposed to do. And this process will feel it out for you, but you have to do your part, you know, and it's hard, you know, as a 15, 16-year-old kid where, you know, everybody wants to be at the cool table, know.
Buddy.
I think it's a lonelier trip too. So one of the things that I don't think, you know, younger kids know it. So it's not like, you know, it's like, you know, if you had children, you know what it feels like that to have a child, right? And what it is. But if you don't have children, do you actually, you know, I know people who don't have children, right? Do they don't really know what they're missing per se, right? It's only when so the kids today don't really know what they're missing. It's not like, you know, we may know it because we experienced it, right? But they don't know it. And it's one of the things I was reading that like the younger the kids nowadays have a kind of, I don't want to say lonelier approach to life, but it is, for lack of a better, the way I look at it is a lonelier approach to life, right? they play games, they talk to people online. That's, kind of, to me, it's not as much about direct connection. One of the only times they do have direct connection as kids is when they play on sports teams. But they hop around the sports teams, so their journey seems to be a lonelier journey. Whereas, like, if me and Derek played in high school together from the time we were young, on youth football, we'd essentially, we would all the way through high school, we'd have 10 years almost together to develop a lot of different things. And then if we played in college, if I went to a college, I played with those guys, you have 4 or 5 years. Now, these kids are on mostly 1 to 2 year journeys from the time they're young kids as everything. So it's not even a thought process. So where we think hopping around is a big deal. I told Derek this. Derek laughed at this when I told him this. My son plays college. He's 9, plays college football, the game. And his favorite thing is at the end of the season, because they built it right into the game. My guy rushed for 1,100 yards that I made, and he's transferring from Nebraska to right? That's built into the game. It's built into the game.
And that's what's tough for me to see it, right? Because to me, and the team aspect was always just the best part of it, right? And the camaraderie you built within that locker room and all of those kind of things that went, we played the games together and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if these guys get that anymore, because how do you develop that in 1-2 years? It's tough.
So let me ask you then. Okay, where is football at its purest right now? Where is it at its purest right now? Where can we go and eliminate all of the sideshow stuff, sexy stuff, cool stuff? I want money. I want fame. I want attention. I want gear. But where is it the most authentic right now? Is it high school? Is it big high school? Is it small college? Where is it most authentic? And where can a guy get that genuine experience that we're talking about? Because I agree with you, Dave. You know what? You can't tell a person he missed on something. He made a choice, and that's his life. He doesn't know that green bean salad is the best thing going right there. He never had it before. He doesn't know. He doesn't give a shit. Can I say that?
You're good. You're good, Coach. This ain't one of those podcasts.
But people only know their life. That's all they know. And we could look at it and say, you're missing the gravy. I did the same thing as you, Dave. My son is 12. He got the college game, and he built the guy who's so proud of it. And I was like, what are you going to do? He goes, well, you're going to transfer, Dad. That's what you do. And I was like, my own kid. My own kid is like, yeah, what do you think you'd do? Of course.
And that's the 100. That's a great question too. By the way, where's Pierce? My guess, this is my guess. My guess is if you're at a small school in a small town that has tradition, like I use Derek's high school as an example where he grew up in. Okay, because we've had a few of the coaches from Butler on in New Jersey, which New Jersey's harder than maybe some of the flyover states and the Midwest, and to build the culture the same way. But I would say within New Jersey, Butler is among the very few that has been able to maintain its culture over time. I would say maybe Cedar Grove might be another one I would say is pretty close. And there's probably a handful.
There's ones, right? I always think of Manalapan, and I think that's a place that has a lot of culture.
Yep.
And they've had some coach turnover, but it just seems like they hang on to that. Football in that community is important. It's an important part of that right there, and their affiliation with that. And that base concept right there of, hey, I'm in a community, and it's important to my community. And not only is it important to me and my teammates and my parents, and that's home. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
I'm sure there's some schools, Texas wise, that are still.
That's what I was thinking. Sure.
Absolutely. But if we're, and look, it's really hard though, because with, just the way the country is, people moving, right? Like relocation, a lot of that stuff, town turnover of, it's not the same quote people, anymore. That stuff's really hard to get that pure form, of anything. let alone football where it's,
And the best public school, like maybe the best public school in America in football is Duncanville in Texas. Okay. And Duncanville has a coach who's probably the best recruiter. I'm amazed that someone doesn't just, I mean, he's older now, so that may be why, but he's the best recruiter, bar none, of every place he's been along the way, because I've run so many camps down there. When he went to Duncanville, all the kids now in the area, because Duncanville's like an open kind of enrollment situation, where you can, I don't know exactly how it works, but you could pay maybe a small. So it's a huge school community. They all go there in middle school. If the ones from the surrounding areas, they all go there in middle school to see if they're good enough to be able to then play in high school at Duncanville. Then you have an exodus of these kids in 8th grade when they kind of realize, okay, Duncanville is legitimately every year probably a top 5 team in Texas, and I'm not good enough at this point to play here. Let me go back to where I'm from or whatever. But that's an example of where a gigantic program in a very, very football oriented south of Dallas community has now leveraged the world that we're in to now create a superpower within a public school situation. And it's wild, because I mean, that would have, when Duncanville went, that coach came in, the guy who was there before was a legendary coach, Jeff Dykes. He was a legendary coach, but he was his motto was build it within the community, right? It was kind of, yes, a traditionalist, right? And he had success, but he could never get to the mountaintop, right? And the coach who came in after him was at, before that, he was at one of the Dallas public schools, and he had done a really, really great job there, but he was only in the Dallas public schools, only able to get like most of the inner city kids, and he was limited to how far he was able to go. But when he got to Duncanville, which is the suburbs of Dallas, he was able to go to the next level with his kind of model, which was a modern model, which turned it into like a program that was very good to a mega powerhouse, one of the best in the top 20 team every year in the country. And it's really interesting because it was a transition from a big high school small town model to same program. It's a 50,000 person town, okay, but now they're a monolith as far as, because of the way that they structured how they were gonna win in football. And it's not a right or wrong answer. It's just very interesting to how that kind of evolved. I was seeing that from one town and from one legendary coach to the next legendary coach,
Right. That school of choice stuff, it seems like that's a hot button everywhere, and maybe in Texas right now. And then a coach sees that and he goes either, oh no, or oh, let's go,
right.
And to your point right there, okay, so it's pretty American right there. You say, hey, here's your circumstances. You got to stay within your confines, and you can only have the kids in your town. That doesn't seem like competitive. You say, oh, you can do what you need to do to make sure that you build the most competitive thing. That seems like a model that we're familiar with in business, certainly in sports and other things. So, the kids who get screwed by it, and it's adults that set the table and make the plan. And the kids, like you said about what the kid only knows what he learns. And, it just gets really big, really fast for a kid. He gets thrown into a competitive environment before he's even physically mature. And that's a lot. And it's not like you said, it's not good. It's not bad. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just a lot. And, how does a kid make it through that? And does he have guidance of an adult who gets it, who gets what it is? Or do they just have a very narrow view of what it is? Or I only want this, or I only understand this fraction of it, or, okay, I understand the dynamics and the politics and the stuff. It's a business, and it's not just about your kid. It's huge, So how about you guys? So how do you do it where you run a business that has a portion of it where it's parent relations, and you're trying to explain to them all what we're doing a podcast talking about this and touching on 7 parts about this, and we've done this every day for all the years right there. And then there's a family that comes in and says, here's what we want. How do you educate them and get them to hear the truth about whether it's their kid, the environment, what it is? How do you do that?
I think it's very difficult. I think, one of the interesting things is, one of the things I do, like when I work with parents, is I ask them a ton of questions about what their objectives are, and is there I get the dream objective. I get it. Okay. What is, if you settled somewhere, what is an acceptable settlement level? And that tells me and I always, hey, listen, we're going to go after dreams, but I want to know what acceptable settlement level is. That usually tells me where their head is, right? Because if they say, like, I don't know, let's say a parent says to me, I want my son to go to the highest level of ball they can and the best academic school, which is like usually most people's kind of thought process, but that's what they say to me. I say, okay, well, we go through it, and let's use Duke.
What's that look like? What is that?
Is that Duke? Yeah. Is that Duke? Is that Northwestern? What is that? All right, let's say they say it's like Duke and Duke and Northwestern. You nailed it. That's what it is. Okay, great. Duke and Northwestern, which everybody wants to probably go to if they're a really good athlete who's smart, right? So, or Stanford, right? So you get there. Now, those schools don't recruit you. But Johns Hopkins recruits you, or Amherst recruits you. And we go through this whole process, and we dig up every stone, and we reach out to all these schools, and we get to the point where those are the schools that are recruiting you. If you can go to Johns Hopkins or Amherst or Williams, will you be happy? And if they say to me, the other schools are my dream, but yeah, those are great schools, and my kid gets the opportunity to play there, and it doesn't, and we exhausted everything, and that's where he goes, yes, we'll be thrilled. Then I know that's someone I can work with. You know what I mean? I can work with that person. If they tell me it's Duke, Northwestern, Stanford, or bust, unless they walked in and they were 6'6", okay, I would say that it's gonna be you're probably gonna be unhappy in the process. You're gonna be unhappy, and I always point to, like, there was an article when I came out in 1992, and I signed with UConn, and they did the record when newspapers actually did articles. They did a whole article on a lot of the players from that time, and they did it. They covered me, Eric Lane, who went to Tennessee. I think Zeke Rogers, who also went to UConn with me, and then I can't remember, another player that went Division I. And but they asked, a lot of the article was on me because I had this roller coaster, because I went to a small school and I was being heavily recruited by every school in the country, and then it dropped off the face of the earth. And then late, all these schools, FCS came in and offered a couple of small Division I's, but I went FCS. And they all came in late. And it was kind of like a rocky process where you thought you were going big time, and then you weren't. And then you thought you may not even have a school that you get a scholarship to. All of a sudden, I had a bunch of scholarship offers at the FCS level. And they covered it. And what I thought was really interesting was my answer to the questions. My answers to the questions were much like any other 18-year-old at the time would answer questions like, I thought that this was going to happen, and then this ended up happening. But I'm happy about the where I am because I have an opportunity to get a scholarship. But you got the lukewarm vibe from me when you read the article. The vibe was this process was not what I thought it was going to be. That was, if you read the article, you would come out and say his process was not what he thought it was going to be, and that's the truth. But at the end of the road, you saw contentment and happiness with the opportunity. So I think about it. I think, you know what? Like, that's how I was as a kid. I had these these dreams of where I was going to go. It looked like it might go in that direction. It did not go in that direction, but I still had an opportunity for success, and I was lucky enough that I worked hard and I had success as a player. But I think a lot of players fall into that category. A huge swath of players, no matter what level they are, they fall into that. Very few players fall into the, 5-star category, almost none, right? And those are the only ones that are going to come out, those 4 and 5 stars, with this experience that they felt like they were recruited properly, okay? But everybody else, including guys that have 10 offers, still walk away feeling like, I should have had this offer. I should have had that. But what is their mindset going into the next place? Is their mindset that I got the opportunity and let me take advantage of the opportunity? Or are they like, hey, I'm not going to, I'm just going here to play because this is my only place to go. And usually what happens is those kids wash out. And those are people you don't want to recruit. You don't want to recruit someone that's coming to you out of malcontent. It's like when you have to convince someone to come out for the team, for the high school football team. And you say, he looks like he could play, and you're convincing him, and finally he relents, and then he's never happy when he's there. You're better off not having him.
100%. Are you a solution or are you a consolation? If you're a consolation prize, probably not going to work out. Hey, who was your coach? Was it Tom Jackson or was it Skip Holtz or both?
Both.
Yeah. Who was your recruiter?
My recruiter was Robichard. I don't know if you remember him.
Dave Robichard?
It was Steve Robichard.
No.
Yeah, he was. So when Tom Jackson got fired, who just passed away about a week or so ago.
All right.
Yeah. When Tom Jackson got fired, he never coached again. I don't know if you noticed, but he never.
No, I did. He rode off into the sunset. He had been at UConn for a minute too, right?
Yeah, he was there for 10, 11 years. I think maybe at first as an assistant, then became the head coach. When he got fired, he never coached again. Steve Robichard left, went to high school, coached at high school for a long time. Yeah. But he was my recruiter, and then Skip came in, and I played. Skip changed my position from fullback to linebacker. Played there for him. Started at linebacker for him. But two totally. I mean, man, we talk about two totally different philosophies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Skip obviously has had up and downs, but for the most part, great success.
He's had a quiet, long, successful career.
Yes.
Right? A quiet, long, and successful career where he's still crushing it in the UFL or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. He's still crushing it there, and he, whatever at Louisiana Tech, he's had a quiet, long, fruitful career.
It's pretty amazing because somebody asked me, the Skip still coach? I'm like, yeah, he's the UFL. He's won three UFL championships. But it's interesting because his father obviously is bigger than life, and I've met him a couple of times, and even though he's a little tiny guy, but he's bigger than life, and that's one of those things where sometimes he kind of started to choose a path when he got fired at Louisiana Tech. When he got fired there, he kind of already had made the decision when he was going to Louisiana Tech that he chose Louisiana Tech because he was looking to coach Division I football, but I don't think he wanted to be anymore at the the things that you had to deal with at the top, right? And he had been through a couple things, but then after Louisiana Tech, it was just, I think it was, hey, I need a break from this, and that opportunity came along.
Yeah,
and he did very well in the opportunity. My guess is that I'm curious to see if he comes back to college football, or what I've heard him say in some interviews is that he would probably go to the NFL as an assistant before going back to college football. From my understanding, just because he's been in that.
A lot of these guys are making.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing a lot of these guys. I mean, look, your buddy, right? Jeff Hatley, Boston College head coach. No, I'll go be a DC in the league, I just don't know. We're talking about these expansions of college coaching rosters and whatnot, and all the things you have to deal with it. That NFL, free agency is free agency, man. If the numbers aren't there and the year contract's up, like, when they're leaving, or that stuff. Like college, I don't know if that is the way it is. And we talk about it all the time. You're re-recruiting your guys every single day that are there for you in college.
Derek, I don't know Jeff like that, but do you think that's what Jeff signed on to when he got into coaching? And he was a fast riser at Rutgers in Pittsburgh. He was a fast riser, and then he is at Ohio State, and then all of a sudden he's the head football coach at Boston College. Do you think that's what he said? Yeah, this is what I want to be doing right here. Battling my tail off at a hard academic school in the ACC and fighting for – that's not really – I don't know. My take is, Jeff way better than I do. I just know of him right there. But he's a ball coach. He wants to coach football. And does he want to do things like that instead of it?
I had a conversation with Jeff. I had a conversation with Jeff because I was sending some players when he was at Boston College, and I got this message like, hang tight. I'll let you know in a little bit. And then basically we saw the interview with Brenneman, and that's when we're like, oh, and he jumped, and he's like, yeah. Then he messaged me that this was after it was already out, but he said, yeah, it wasn't what he wanted to be his college head coaching experience as a guy who was in college all those years, and he was known as a great recruiter. That was really not just a defensive coordinator, but he was known as a great recruiter. And I think because I sat with Jeff when he was at Rutgers, when I was running all those camps all over the country, Jeff used to come in. Shiana used to send him in. He would sit down. We would go over to players that would come through the events and be like, do you think this kid's Rutgers Mercurial? Did this kid come through? And we would go, he was so good. He was so detailed that he would actually come to my office and would want to go through it. Like, do you have an hour? I'm coming down there. Do you have an hour I could go through some of these players with you? Absolutely. Glad to do it. And that's how detailed he was. But he loved coaching, and he loved the relationship building of recruiting. Like, he wanted to know who those guys were so he could build the relationship with the players that he would then coach. And I think in his head, he was already in the NFL, because I remember when he was great. When he was at San Francisco, when I was an NFL agent for 6 years, I would send, if I had fringe guys, he would take them into mini camp. It was, he was into building relationships. You know what I mean? Like, that was his thing. He's like, as long as this kid comes in and competes, you know what I mean? You're one of your, I know it's one of your guys. I'm going to give him an opportunity, and that's who he was. So when he went back to the NFL, to me, it was like, he just wants to work with guys, coach them, because the part that he thought was great about college football, which was the development and relationship part of it, in his mind, that was probably gone. And I might as well coach ball, develop the guys that come in my room. I get to know them a little bit more in depth because they're NFL players. They're men. I could talk to them as men. And it's I'm not going to be able to do that, change a kid's life type of thing the way that I once could change a kid's life by having them a part of my program. And I think that, and I'm not speaking for, because this didn't come out of his mouth, but this is just from, just seeing how he is and knowing him over the years.
But I think that is the crossroads of the conundrum that all these coaches are going through right here.
Right. I think in that last year or two. Yeah. I think that's like this little window, right, Coach? Like, not to cut, like, just saying, I think this is like a time period where you're right. It's getting squeezed. And
whether it's at the top of the chart right there, whether it ends up being the head coach at Alabama, or whether it ends up being the guys who say, I'm coaching for the money. I never thought I'd say I'm coaching for the money, and, it's just a wild time. It's a wild, wild time in this profession. Here we go. Like, here's the angry old man on the porch yelling at the kids playing in the yard. But I cannot believe, 34 years ago when I got into it, sure, I was certainly young and dumb, but I never, ever saw this. I never saw, not even 10 years ago, would I say, oh, okay, this is where it's headed right there.
Listen,
Coach, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave,
here's the funny part. I bet you this: if you're a player, okay, and like you said, what your son said about changing schools, the pressure on them to take the money if they're good enough, right? They're out of school and they do really well, and I'm playing for you, and I have a great year, and some guy says to me, affiliated with the program, says, hey, listen, if you get in the portal, I'm going to give you $5,000 just to get in the portal so we could see if we're a fit for you. And you have no money. And then you're in this, but I love this school. And then you're in this conundrum from that standpoint. So but now listen, this, to me, it's one of the things, like I say this to parents and I say this to players. Okay. And because before I started my own, the companies in sports and coached, I was in corporate America, and I saw at a young age, I rose really quick in technology field. And I would say I was a perfect fit for it. Like I really was like, boom, 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 rose up really quick at a young age and understood technology. And I chose the right majors in grad school. And then I shifted. I went to go coach high school sports, and my father's still a high school coach. And
crazy,
yeah. And I said, you know what? I want to have a business where I'm helping kids. And I would have never dawned on me, just like you. I would have never dawned on me, because I tell you the truth, I wouldn't have shifted careers. The truth is this: I was in corporate America, and I was making a boatload of money very quick. I would have not have changed careers if I knew that sports was going to be the exact same way as corporate America, which is good. Listen, I'm a capitalist. I think that people should have the opportunity to make as much money as they want to make. I think, aligned with your values, you got to figure out where your values are as a person, right? So for me, I realized this was more of my value than just going and making as much money as I possibly could, which I always said, I was pretty good at it. I could have probably did that. But it was amazing because I would have never thought sports would go into that direction. And this was around the 2000 time period. I would have never thought that sports would go into the exact direction. And what I tell parents all the time, it's like, listen, when you take money, okay, there's some important things you have to know about when you take money. There are expectations of you when you take money, right? There are true expectations. You can say, when you run scholarship, that your coach expects you to do great and blah, 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 blah. Listen, there's a difference when you're getting paid. When you're getting paid, the person in charge also believes they have the right to fire you, right?
Yes.
So it's not just you're getting I'm paying you to do a job. You also have the right to be fired if you're getting paid to do a job. Okay, so when a coach is disappointed in you for not playing well and you're on scholarship, that's one thing. He still probably likes you. He's just disappointed in how you're performing, thinks you could do better. When he's disappointed in you and you're getting $100,000,
buddy,
and the booster that is giving you $100,000 is telling the head coach that this kid has to play first before you go to the next guy. Okay, if he fails, okay, you could go to the next guy, but he goes in first, right? So now, if you do fail or you throw an interception, that pressure is a different type of pressure. Okay, 100%. It's not like the pressure like when Patrick Mahomes is 25 years old, 26 years old, 27 years old. Under that pressure, he's a much more mature individual than a 19, 20-year-old. And people can say whatever they want about it. But the truth is, a 19 and 20-year-old figuring that out is very, very different than Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. I bet you if you asked them, those guys, if they were getting paid $200,000 and threw an interception when they were 19, how they would have handled it versus now, where they know how to handle it, right? From becoming an adult, and they have families and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. They start to understand the priorities. You take that money, there's an expectation. And that's one of the things that parents say, I want that money. Okay, you want that money. You're also going to get criticized. No longer is the media going to treat you as a scholarship player. They're
No,
gonna
they're
say,
going to treat you like a pro, and you're going to have to take those bullets, and you're going to have to sit up there and face the noise. And that's the other thing, all the good that comes with this social media. And now everybody's going to be able to say what they're saying in the stands that you can only hear a little bit of it. They're going to post that on your little tweet or whatever you show out there. And when you don't come to freaking deliver on what this is, dude, they're going to let you know, right? And how fast that changes, right? That's I think the biggest piece of it is the speed at which all of this stuff now happens. It is fast turnover, right? Like, I love you this week, and the next day, I don't love you so much now, and I'm going to let you know about it. And how do you handle that, right? Like, there's a lot more coaching that gets done in this space now.
At
19, right? We watch all these NFL quarterbacks that end up in the NFL too soon after 3 years, and we end up saying, he didn't thrive, or he took a longer, he had to get to the second contract. But then you watch these guys who went to the full length of time. Okay, he finished after 5 years. No, he had a COVID year. And, they're a little bit more productive. They're a little bit more resilient. They're a little bit more ready to go. Oh, is it physical development? No, it's the space between your years. And I don't know about you all, but I waited till I was in my early 30s to get married because I was nowhere near mature enough to make any kind of decision like that and end up having any level of responsibility like that. And that's a lot for those kids. That money's a lot.
On that.
That's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot.
You're trying to figure out yourself, let alone everything else. You know what I mean? To navigate those waters, it is difficult. Yeah. And you're talking about, Dave and I had kids later in life too, right? Like, I have a 2-year-old, like not even a 2-year-old right now. And believe me, I sure as hell wouldn't be able to deal with a lot of the stuff that at that age to try to think about having to be in these situations and make those decisions. Absolutely not. Like, just not ready for it. I think that's self-awareness stuff. And coaching at a level like you did, where you don't have the shrink on staff, right? Like, you're wearing that hat too.
I had a couch in my office. That's what we had. I had a couch. You could come in and visit with me about it, Hey, come on, sit down. We'll talk it through.
But that's also, Coach, like, I think there's something to be said for that too, right? Like, playing at those levels, right? Because, I was an FCS guy, played at Sacred Heart for a year and then transferred back to Montclair State. And believe me, like, the conversations I would have with my head coach at Montclair, I don't know if I could have had at that FCS level at Sacred Heart, in that time frame. Like, I just wasn't comfortable having those. But to have a coach that was, willing to talk about so much more than football, right, and really kind of help me develop as to who I wanted to be as, a man, an employee, a father, a husband, all of those kind of things. Like, I just owe that so much more to him than any freaking blitz he dialed up for me. Those are the kind of things that you take back. And now, guys don't stay long enough to even develop those relationships, or are they even genuine? Right,
they expect it right now. You'll finish with the freshman after a year. They say, "Coach, you don't even know me." I go, "I know."
That's like, I'm not really supposed to, buddy. Like, I'm not supposed to yet.
We're around each other every day, but you just got here, and I'm just learning you. Give it a chance. Give it some time. We hadn't even hit an off season where the rigors of a normal practice week or a preseason, where it's pop, 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 pop. Yeah, no, and then sit there. I will know you, but not today, not yet.
That's a great point. I wonder, I'm curious,
love that.
Your thoughts on this. Do you think that there will be a lot of kids that could have gotten to the mountaintop that, if they had the time to develop, could have gotten to the mountaintop, that are going to completely wash out of the football system because of what happens with where they're asking you to basically be ready now, no matter where you are, because they know you're probably going to hop, right? So there are kids that are not ready for the pressure, but will be 2 years from now, are not ready for the pressure. And in my opinion is that some of them are never going to ever get the opportunity to know if they can get there, And I think that's the crazy part of this system, we're washing out possibly a lot of great players. And then some of these players that are peak early, okay? So you want the player that's peaking early. Okay, so you go and you have to you're forced to recruit the guy that can peak at 19 and 20. But at 23, he may not be the best guy, or 22, he may not be the best guy. Like his cap, and then he ends up washing out too. That's the crazy part. So you're washing out guys that you don't know can get there, okay, yet, because we're not going to develop. And then you're taking guys that are there, because they've developed earlier, but they have a certain cap. And then what happens is they reach their cap, and then you stop playing them because you're like, wait a minute. Okay, he started for me this year, but I got this kid now who's come in who's better. He's been at Division II and then now moved up, and he's ahead of this guy now. And now this kid will never understand, did I get worse? Like, that's what they think. Because I've talked to a lot of players that have gone, like, I got worse. I'm like, no, you didn't get worse. You reached a certain level of your limits as far as an athlete standpoint. And you went to a level that was probably higher than you belonged at because you were more mature earlier. Yeah. Okay. But you like say you went to Rutgers, right? And you started early, but that was your cap, and another player came along, but maybe you belonged at Monmouth, and you could have been a 4-year starter there, right?
Right.
Or Coach, I'm sure you're seeing it with your kid right now, being at the age that he's at, 12, right? Look, we all know those middle school superstars that were just hit puberty sooner, and like then you never know about them in high school. You're like, damn, that town always had this dude who was an animal. Where the hell did he go? It's like, oh, he's still on the roster, dude, but he just ain't that guy anymore, you know?
That was in my high school. It was Danny Baresi. He was
Coach, you know the name, shit.
Danny Baresi went bald at like 14, and he matured way past, and he didn't grow anymore. He was muscular in middle school.
Yeah, he was buying beer in 6th grade.
Bald, Yeah,
I know it in my town too. We all had him. It's funny because he was, when I had my training facilities, he was my business partner, and he tells the story all the time.
See, he was still trying to get to that level, Dave. He was trying to use the facility.
I remember in 6th grade, he was pitching to us, and that ball was coming in so fast. I got 2 hits off. I went 2 for 3, and it was like, oh, you're so great. I'm like, listen, I never saw that ball. I just swung, and I got lucky. He was throwing the ball so fast, and if he hit you, it hurt. But he was literally 5'8" in 7th grade.
But everybody's got him, man.
5'8" as a senior, and and he had a beard in 7th grade.
Yeah,
and
he was buying a beer.
He was the greatest 7th grade athlete I ever saw.
Yeah, those middle school heroes, man. They don't screw around, dude. But now, look, you don't know because
I forgot all about those guys.
But now, you look even now, like it's just. Sometimes parents and coaches just get in the way, right? Now you're reclassing kids, you're dealing with this, like for all the new stuff that's coming about, and it's wild to think about it. But some of that stuff still stays the same.
What's funny about it though? It's funny because I thought about it when I just said it. That person ended up running track at Division III. The way that the world was back then, he was able to realize that he was peaked out.
Yeah,
he was smart enough, and he would tell you this to this day. He was smart enough that he developed really early. He enjoyed that dominance but he really peaked out, and he was fairly successful at Division III. And but he was able to assess that. He never said to himself, I was the greatest player in 8th grade. I should go to Alabama. That was the thought process was never entered his head. It was like, hey, I grew before everybody else. This was my kind of cap. I reached close to my cap. If I want to continue my career at the college level, I got to go to a level that is to my ability, which was for him was the Division III track, and he did very well at Division III track. Ran,
and that's rare.
Got medals.
That self-awareness.
I think you had it back then. I think you had it back then. Because your parents would, and
they were honest.
In recruiting, I always said this to Derek. This is my first thing I always said, Derek. I said, you want to, when a kid who's younger comes, and he'll tell you this, when a kid who's younger, a freshman or an eighth grader, or a parent, the kid wants to go at a high level, I say, make sure you meet their parents, because then you're going to know what level they're going to. Because when you meet their parents, you will see the side. Now, listen, are there outliers that run 4.4 into 40? Yes, absolutely. Okay. But you'll have a good idea when you meet the parents and you see their size, mom and dad, what height they're probably going to be, and the range of level they're going to be. And then you can start to have that conversation and set the expectation with them. You know what I mean? But if you don't meet their parents, the funny part is some of these parents I find now, which is funny to me. Like, I'm like, have you looked in the mirror? I mean, Derek's got a 9-8, right? Derek understands because he's 5'8", 5'9".
But thanks, I appreciate the extra.
Yeah, I gave you a boost of an inch.
Thank you. In cleats. But
they don't look. They won't even look in the mirror to like. You're standing here, and your kid is in the eighth grade, and he's as tall as you right now, and you're 5'7". Oh, but he's going to get to 6 feet. No, he's not going to get to 6 feet.
Right. I say to parents all the time in recruiting, I say, hey, make sure you get to campuses. And I said, well, I want to go to camps. I want to get offers. I said, but if you go to a campus, you could watch practice or a game and see if you look like the players.
That's it, Coach.
Field.
That's
see
it.
And if you look like them, then maybe you get recruited there. But that doesn't always stick, right?
And really what's unfortunate too, Coach, and you'll see it, like we talk about this all the time, is, we're different, and we just, it's the honesty. Like, I owe it to that kid to be honest, and mom and dad, right? And they've just been told everything they've wanted to hear, because that trainer wants that guy to pay another $200 for the next group of sessions and all this kind of stuff. And look, whether my reputation is, that guy's an asshole because I'm honest, I'm sorry that I have to be the guy to tell your kid, like, hey, I think it's this level is where that's going to end up. And a lot of times I'm the first one to have to tell them, or, Dave's the first one that has to, you got to put that out there. But I owe it to that kid if I care enough about it. And you as a parent, like, I'm sorry that this is all you see on social media. That's not the norm. That's the 3% that gets to play on Channel 2, that gets to go to Notre Dame, that gets, of course, outliers, maybe one, whatever. But
so let me ask you this then too. Like, my take on the whole recruiting thing, no matter what the process is water usually seeks its own level. A guy ends up being at the level that works for him. And even more so now in the transfer portal, whether it's for development or whether it's through fall down and lack of production, because maybe it used to be back in our day, Dave, it was, hey, you were there and you stayed there and you wrote out your choice, whether it was good or bad or in between. And the same thing for the coach. Okay, they made a mistake on Andy and, he's here. But still, even in that day, you said water seeked its own level to a pretty significant degree. Now, so if there ends up being an error in the calculus and you've got a beast at Albany that could play at Florida State, okay, that's going to figure out. And now he ends up playing in the NFL. But how many times, like, this is where the parental piece right here is, for those pieces, well, maybe my recruiting service isn't doing enough. Maybe my high school coach isn't doing enough. Maybe we should have done this differently. But doesn't it usually work out? How many guys do you know over the course of the years that you say, this guy's just walking the streets of town and he would have been a Major League Baseball pitcher if he had it usually sorts itself out most.
Correct. And he's 100%. Not a Major League pitcher for a reason, okay? This is the other thing that I believe in, and not everybody believes this, but I believe this, okay? I you probably used to hear this all the time. Oh, there's all these guys in New York City that could be pro basketball players if this or this didn't happen. Well, guess what? This or this decision did happen, and that's why they're not pro basketball players. The people who are pro, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, okay, they made decisions along the way that gave them the opportunity to become the players that they are. All right. And you know what? They had some of that clarity. And yes, I'm sure they had people along the way that saw the ability and helped them along the way, set them straight when they needed to, all those kind of things. Okay. But you have to be able to take advantage of the situation. The other thing I think is really important is you don't want to force it. I liken it to dating women. Okay. Everybody has dated a woman that was way out of their league. Okay. Where you're basically forcing it. And you're like, my goodness, this woman, I should, my God, she's so amazing. I just want her to love me. Well, the bottom line is, you forced the issue. You got her to go out with you, but she really wasn't the right fit for you. Okay, and because she wasn't the right fit for you, it was not going to work out. It's one of those things where you need to have the right fit and the right opportunity, the right situation for you. And if, oh, by the way, that is the beauty of the transfer portal. If, oh, by the way, you outgrew that, you really did. You don't need to go into transfer portal because your friends went into transfer portal. You go into transfer portal because you know what? I really am that much better than the level I'm at, okay? Or I look at the roster, and it really is a situation where, you know what? I picked a school that was above my level. I chose the girlfriend that was beyond my league, and I realized, you know what? I should be playing over here, which was the old go down a level thing, which was a real thing. Like going down a level and playing, it could be a really smart decision. Just like going up a level, if you are that good, like that, you know, some of those players I saw. You see it all the time. You know, a player from the Ivy League that goes in his fifth year to a big school, you know, he ended up growing to 6'6" or whatever, right? Yeah, absolutely. That is the beauty of the beautiful part of the system. If you look at it from a positive side, is an opportunity. But don't force the issue. Don't throw away a good opportunity just because everyone else thinks that you know, everyone else is chasing something.
That's the saddest part about it, is when you watch a kid that goes into the portal and he's on a good deal and, you know, he's even a good kid, or, you know, and this goes back to our discussion about decisions made when we're 19 or 20 years old. And even in that case, Dave, when we're talking about, and you have a scholarship and you say, hey, I'm going to jump in the portal and see what's out there and test the waters. Well, you know, Dave, from your experience, the dudes who are going into the portal right now aren't doing it on a whim. They're not doing it because, hey, let's test the waters right there. Somebody has gotten to them and said, hey, you're going to get this offer right here, or this is going to happen to you right here. Jumping out of the plane without a parachute doesn't work out.
Shit.
Unless you're an offensive lineman. Unless you're an offensive lineman.
And that actually brings up a great point, right? Like choosing what position to play, right? Like, no, I want to carry the ball. I want to do this. I want to do, buddy, if you want to put your hand in the dirt and go be a guard, you're going to have a lot more opportunities being that than you are, you know, guys are overpaying for linemen at this point because there's not a lot of them, because it ain't the, you know, bells and whistles position where I'm the guy. They don't get many clicks. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you have guys, there's 5 of these dudes on the field at all times. What are we doing? Like, if you really want to dive into it, but hey, there's no 7-on-7 teams for linemen. There's nothing for the, you know what I mean? It ain't the sexy thing.
Here, let's do this, fellas. Okay, let's create a 9-on-7 league. And it's just 9-on-7. It's the opposite of 7-on-7. We're doing inside drill, and it's 9-on-7. And I think we could get a TV deal where it's just inside run game. And, you know, it's really short. It's probably only going to be like, I don't know if it's more than 20 plays for the competition right there, and you keep scoring that. How great would that be for a concept?
It'd be great.
You think anybody's buying that right there?
Nope.
I love that. That would be my favorite.
No administrator is, because we can't have that much contact, coach. We're going over, you know what I mean? That's the limit. We can only tackle twice a week here. What are we doing?
Yeah, it's true. It's smart in a way, too. It's smart. But I
No,
tell you
I
what,
do
we
not
get
coach.
those 12 reps and 9-on-7
There's
one day a
still,
week.
there's
I
still,
love that now. You
Oh
know?
yeah, it's
I
great.
was, it
Inside
is,
drill
it
is the
is.
greatest drill.
Best thing ever. Because as a safety, you got to participate. Corners, you guys go over there and just cover. Let me get in the box here. Let me get in the box.
Well, Derek,
And let
what
me
you're
get
bringing
after
up right now is the biggest fight between offense and defensive staff in America. Say, why is that safety in the inside run drill right there? There's nobody to block him, and he's coming in and blowing up the tailback.
You're
That's
like,
a great
sorry,
way to
man, they
start a
put me on
war.
this drill. I'm just doing what I'm coached to do, coach. Sorry. Hey, I'm good. And this is coming from a guy who couldn't cover anybody, right? Like, hey, you go to this side because you're rolling down no matter what coverage we're in, buddy. Like, hook to curl is where you're staying, okay? Like, that's it. But it's a great, argument, coach. It really is. It's just, you just see a lot of things now. And like you said, like there's a group, this is now a generation that hasn't seen any of that beforehand. The days of that stuff, that was gone by the time, these guys have been wearing Guardians since they put a helmet on, or they didn't even start football until they were in 7th or 8th grade. Dave sees it a lot more now because he's got a 9-year-old who's, what is this? This will be Troy's, 3rd year of tackle?
This year coming up will be his 3rd year. Yeah, he'll be in the 10. He'll be in the 10 this year. Yeah. So it's
it's a weird world, man.
He's played tackle for 3 years.
No, this will be his 3rd year. He did 2. He did 2.
This will be his 3rd. So he's got 2
played 8, 9. Then this year will be his 3rd as a 10-year-old. It's I mean, like I'm in Middletown, which is a big traditional football place. It's funny because we play places that are traditional football places. Those are always good games, and then we play places that don't really have a tradition in football, and it's like it's not even a close game because they have a hard time getting enough kids. So it's very interesting. Tackle football from town to town. Now, what's obviously huge everywhere, which is flag. I mean, that's huge everywhere, which is it's interesting to see how that 15 years from now affects how tackle is. I'm curious on all of that. But
what the Pro Bowl is now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like I have an opinion, but I'm not sure because I feel like there are some things for young kids I think that are really good at it. Like, keeps them in football like until they're ready. You know what I mean? So there's no pressure if they're not ready. Like, I know a lot of kids that I think probably will play football down the line that stay in flag because either the parents aren't comfortable with it yet or they think their kid isn't comfortable with it yet, but they're very good athletes, and I think they probably will play tackle. So my whole thing is like whatever kind of keeps them in football to me, whatever it is, whether it's flag, 7-on-7, if they if they want to play tackle, whatever it is that keeps them involved in enjoying the game, and it is important because I think when you get to high school, then it keeps high school programs with the opportunity to continue to have football programs. Whereas I think if we went the path that, even though I'm a traditionalist on a lot of this stuff, I think if the path we stayed on, because once the whole concussion movie came out and all that stuff came out, I think that there was a pivot that was inevitable that had to happen. And to me, as long as they keep in football and we have the opportunity to get them down the line, great.
Sure. I agree.
Whatever that takes.
If that kid, like you said early in that, if he's not ready or if he's got to grow his passion, we got to dig our hooks into him to get him to appreciate football. And if it's flag when he's younger, that's good. Because at the end of the day, when I watched it with my son, I held my older one out of football until I think 7th grade, whatever age that is. But the younger one said, nope, I want to go. So the one had flag football up till 7th grade, then was tackle. But the younger one, that's kind of what happens with the younger ones. They get whatever they want. The path was blazed by the older ones, so the younger ones get what they want. So he's been in tackle since whatever for 3 years, and he's 12, 13 now. So not unlike your son. He started early. But
Yeah, it's what I think that's a good thing about football now. It gives them the choice. They're not under pressure, like if they're not ready to get hit, that they have to go and
Yeah.
They got to mature.
I think flag, and I think flag is good athletically. I mean, there's things that I don't think apply, but I think that the athletic part, the change in direction, catching ball, all that stuff that applies. And then obviously the hardest part about flag is the lineman thing. I think that's in general the hardest part about football. Probably always has been. I'm guessing it always has been, because even back when I was a kid, the kids in line were reluctantly playing the line. It's not like most of them wanted to be on the line. They have learned to love and appreciate the line position. But I don't think that there's that many kids in the world that say to themselves, I want to go and block for others, and
hell of a deal.
Get no glory.
The guy full speed.
Yeah. I think that's something that they have to learn to appreciate over time. So when we say that there's, sometimes as coaches we want to say, they won't just grind it out and be a lineman. It's like, no, I remember in high school, the kids that they put on the line, and I remember kids turning around and pointing and saying, like, why isn't he on the line? Because I was big, and I was fast. I was the tailback, and I was bigger than most of the linemen, And they're like, why isn't he in line? They're like, because you can't run like he can, And those were, and that's the first time those kids were like, the aha, like, oh, that's right, okay. Well, you know what? I do want to play football, and here's my opportunity. And so they still kind of have to be coaxed into, for the most part, into playing the line. So I think that's okay, and I think that that's always going to be the one thing that's always going to be hard about football. And that's why at the highest levels, when you watch the NFL, the first thing they're complaining about when Patrick Mahomes is getting his line is not good enough, because you know what? It's hard to get 100 great offensive linemen in the world. I don't know that there is, each team might have one or two that are quote unquote the best, and then you got to find guys that fill their roles properly so you can get a line that works in sync. And that's the most important part of the line, is that they work in sync together, because there's not that many. What's the guy from Becton from
the guard 77?
There ain't that many Quentin Nelsons.
Pound guys in the world. There's not many of those. Those are as rare as 7-footers. And it's like. But yeah, if you listen, you want to know how good a football team is going to be. I always say it's almost the same exact thing as when you say you want to know how good a basketball team is. You want to know how good my basketball team's going to be. Come into the gym and see how tall they are. And I can tell you pretty much close to how many wins they're going to have relative to the other teams, right? And you want to know how good the football team is? Come and see my line. And if they are gigantic and they are big and strong, you're probably going to have a decent team.
Amen.
So. Anyway, Coach, it's been great having you on, man. Really, you could do our job better. You do our job better than us.
Yeah, Coach, you might have a calling.
We're just sitting around talking right there. I was saying to Derek, I say, hey, what's the topic, man? What are we going to cover? No, we're just rolling.
Our show is like a football Seinfeld episode. You know what I mean? We talk about the things that
talk shop.
We talk shop, and we end up covering everything without actually having an overall agenda.
Coach, it's way better than, hey, these are the questions we're going to ask. This is you just kind of roll with it, and that's it's really been a method that guys are now looser when they're coming in to talk, and they express in certain things and how they going back and forth and stuff. It's just a different model, and it works. It's kind of just, hey, we'll just talk shop, and wherever it goes, we take it and we go.
It's good. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's generous of you. It's fun.
Coach, appreciate you. Thank you.
It's good to get to know you a little better too. I appreciate it.
No doubt about it, Coach. And we do every once in a while we do X and O breakdowns. So like we've had guys come in and go and literally pull up film, talk what they do in this situation. You ever want to do that? That'd be great. We'd love to have you.
That'd be awesome.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Appreciate you guys reaching out and appreciate the opportunity. It's a lot of fun. Wish you guys well, okay?
It's great talking to you, Coach. Have a great day.
See you later.
Bye. That was great. Excellent show. Really great. What a great guy.
Tough place too.
Yeah, that's a tough place. Tough place, but we didn't really dive into that. I think we all kind of know the good and the bads of Pace. Having been North Jersey guys, they're it's an isolated place. It's actually a pretty town, by the way. That area, nice place to live.
Yeah.
A nice place to live. But yeah, that was a great show. I already borrow. We have on the head coach of Susquehanna, right? Is that
yes,
tomorrow?
Sir.
And then
we have, and then Dawn Carpel from SJV will be Thursday, and then Dan Fichter, kind of along the Feed the Cats type gig, then kind of like whether it's neurological or whether it's strength and conditioning or all coming back to ball. It's all, I'm telling you that the Tony Holler stuff, the guys that we've talked to, and hey, go talk to this person, or hey, go talk to this guy. Every one of them has given us somebody else that's, one, willing to come and talk shop about this stuff, which I think is just phenomenal in general. And then two, to kind of just align with it and kind of go. Like, it's so cool.
I think the Feed the Cats ecosystem, I guess I call it now, because there's different components.
Like the tree that it's now, or the roots that are coming from, you know what I mean? Like it's all trickling to certain. Everybody's got.
We do our PR every time we feel we need to center ourselves before sports, or even if we're going through the day and something's. I don't know. We're rushing to something, I'm like, you know what? Let's do some
center.
Let's do some RPR. Dude, my kid's in there doing this, Derek. Okay, he's doing this. He's doing this. I'm like, just do it, dude. I'm like, literally 20 seconds will get you feeling a little bit better, and sometimes that's all you need is to feel a little bit better, And but it is amazing. Have you done it to yourself yet?
Yeah, dude, it's amazing.
It's amazing, dude. I don't know if it's psychosomatic, meaning I'm just anecdotal,
yeah. And if it is, I don't really care, right? Because it's working,
right? Doesn't matter. It's people. The funniest thing was this: people used to always say, I don't know if you ever used it, but I don't even know if it's still around. But remember Ben Gay? Remember the stuff? So I was just all the way
from muscle aches and shit, right?
From the time I was a kid all the way through college, I always put it part of my warm up. I would put it on all over my legs and to get myself loose. And people used to be like, "Why do you do it?" It's just a topical. I'm like, I don't know.
I don't care,
and I don't care because you know what? As soon as I do it all, and it's part of my process, I feel ready to go. Yeah. If I don't do it, I just don't feel ready. So whatever. Listen, people can say whatever they want. The mental part of playing your sport and how you approach it. It's listen, if you played chess, okay, would you prepare for a chess game by just coming into the game and not preparing yourself mentally? If that's your way, maybe you would. But most people have some sort of process that they go through. So it's no different. It's no different, man. It's no different.
No doubt.
All right. Let's get out of here on to the next one.